I had an out of control mind. I was experiencing extreme panic attacks, anxiety, depression, chronic insomnia. I literally couldn't go to sleep at night. I would drink, half a bottle of whiskey just to try and get to sleep.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond Risk and Back. My guest today is a meditation coach. It's like I can hear the eyes rolling. And as a parenting coach, when I'm telling parents to take care of themselves first, it means the whole body, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, all of it. At the end of every episode, for 4 years now, parents, I have said, take care of yourselves first, your adult relationship second, and your children third, because that's how we do our best work with our children. The fastest path to enlightenment that I know of is conscious breathing. Meditation has always been a struggle for me. And I'm going to talk to Tom about this because I'm very ADHD. And so it's hard for me to concentrate. But I also know that meditation is more than that and that there's different kinds of meditation. And I'm sure we could discover it, but instead we're going to bring in an expert to help us discover what kind of meditation is going to work for us, how to embody this, because in martial arts all these years, there's one Zen saying. And Tom, now that I've got you live mic and everything, I want you to hear this and I want you to start the show speaking to this. I heard this many years ago in martial arts where a teacher said to me, outside noisy, inside empty. And being someone who's ADHD, the reverse has always been true in my mind. The inside has always been something much more noisy than the outside. But I understand what's being said and I struggle to embrace it. And Tom, I can imagine that the parents, teachers, and clinicians listening to this show whose lives are very noisy hear that statement, outside noisy, inside empty, and love the idea of that. But Tom, we are right in the middle of the shit. So is that what meditation is? Do I have to be empty? Do I have to be quiet?
It's a really good question, and it's a beautiful statement from your teacher. It is a state that we can achieve. It's a state that I live in these days today, but it's a state that takes time. And it's really important we emphasize that it is a process that we can arrive at with an emptiness inside of ourselves, which is when we say emptiness in Buddhism, Zen mastery, what they're talking about is quietness. And the quietness exists when the mind is no longer making a lot of cacophony, a lot of noise. And the way we do that is through meditation practices. Now, as you said very correctly, that there are many, many ways to meditate, and some of them are much easier than others. Concentration, focusing, trying to still the mind is a very, very difficult process because the mind doesn't want to be still. The mind actually wants to think a lot, and it wants to think about things that are in the future or the past. The mind doesn't really have that much concern as to whether you enjoy the nature of its thoughts. The mind just likes to think. And the mind will hijack you, that is the conscious being that exists outside and within and beyond the thinking mind. There is consciousness itself, and then there's the thinking mind. You're not the thinking mind, you're the consciousness itself. So what we want to do is we want to identify that, hey, there is a thinking mind here, and it's not me. It's just the nature of a particular, piece of muscly tissue inside the skull, and it has a tendency, and it's been given that tendency free rein for quite some time for most people, with very little discipline, very little practice, very little structure. It's like a little kid that has had no discipline, no boundaries, no guidelines, and it just sort of runs rampant. And so what we want to do is at least start the process on a daily basis of reining in that, they call it the monkey mind. Now, when it comes to different practices and ways to do that, I found through my own research after doing this for 27 years and doing a lot of research in the early days, I was a very alpha male, I wanted quick results. I wanted something to fix the problem. And I had a chronic problem, which was I had an out of control mind. I was experiencing extreme panic attacks, anxiety, depression, chronic insomnia. I literally couldn't go to sleep at night. I would drink, half a bottle of whiskey just to try and get to sleep. A lot of addictions because I was so depressed, which led to more addictions, which led to more depression and a deep spiral to the point where I was end up really questioning life. And I was on suicide watch with one of the local hospitals and had to report in every day. And that's when I found meditation. Now, I did a lot of research. I was looking into a lot of different styles of meditation. Now, most of the meditations I found, like visualizations, focusing on the breath, third eye, chakra cleansing, all those sorts of things I found at that point in time almost impossible to do. My mind was just too crazy, too out of control. was too busy, and it had just been allowed to run rampant without any checking. But then I came across what they call transcendental meditation, or also called Vedic meditation. And the beautiful thing about this particular style of meditation is that there's no concentration, there's no effort, there's no trying. All you have to do is repeat this beautiful primordial vibration. It's a wonderful little sweet sound that has a resonance to it. And you repeat that sound, a particular sound based upon when you were born, and the teacher gives it to you in a little ceremony, and you repeat that sound inside your head. Now, the amazing thing about this meditation, which has been highly used across the world, and some of the most successful people in the world are using it now, is that the mantra, the sound, has this wonderful quietening effect on the mind. Now, I don't have to try to force my mind to do something because the mantra is actually going to do that. The sound actually does that for me. And so all I have to do is just very gently repeat the sound. Now, what that does is it takes the mind away from the external world. So our mind will gravitate to something, a form or phenomenon in the future, past, or present that is outside of us. It'll be your children, it'll be your finances, it'll be who's going to run for president, it'll be who's winning the NFL. It'll be something outside of you that is a form or phenomenon that your mind goes to constantly, forward, future, past, backwards, and it's looking for something that can stimulate the body and the mind. Now, what the mantra does is it takes the mind inward, away from the forms and phenomenon, away from excitation, away from stimulation. And it takes it to the subtle and subtle and subtle and subtle and the quiet and quiet and quiet. And eventually it goes to a place where the mind, what we do is transcends. That means it goes beyond thinking. Now, when the mind goes beyond thinking, now we've found the emptiness. Now we find the inner quiet. Now, it doesn't matter what state you're in, doesn't matter what state your life is in, doesn't matter how much turmoil is in your life. Most of my students will get into that state just on a weekend workshop. And the beautiful thing is that state is within everyone. That emptiness is actually within everyone. It's like saying, imagine if there was no clouds in the sky. Well, the sky would be blue. And the sky is actually always blue, whether there's clouds in it or not. The sky is always blue, whether the clouds in it or not. It's just a matter of whether you're beyond the clouds or in the clouds or seeing the clouds. But if the clouds just slowly disappear, you'll find that there's blue sky there. Or if you go through the clouds, you'll find there's blue sky. So the quietness is always there. And we've just got to find a way to get beyond the thinking mind and go, there it is. There it is.
I want to make sure that parents understand, that my listeners understand how you got to where you are. You talked about your depression. You talked about your attraction to the addictive behaviors, your level of depression, and even being on suicide watch for a local hospital. And you're also a parent. You've got a boy and a girl. And you as a parent, you went through it with them as well. Were you going through your depression at the same time where they're in their 13 to 16-year-old having their teenage struggles, or were these separate moments?
Yeah, I was very blessed that I managed to go through that before I had children, which meant that I had a very strong, stable foundation by the time I got to parenthood. So I went through my deep, dark night of the soul. And it's really important that we start with this premise. Any difficult time in our life is usually and always potentially the catalyst for immense growth. And if we're open to that possibility, that this is a catalyst, this is a prelude to something far greater, and that evolution will supersede this experience. That means that something better and brighter and more beautiful will be beyond this. So for me, not being able to realize that at the time, I can realize that now, and I can see that in all people's situations and circumstances, which really helps them when I come from that place. But at the time, I was in my deep, dark night of the soul. And what that was leading me to, without me realizing it, was an awakening, a realization. So I went through that at 29. It was all through my 20s. It was building and building and building, but the actual nervous breakdown was at the age of 29. I had my nervous breakdown, and then that was when I found meditation. That was a game changer for me. I didn't have children until I was about, 32, 33. My children came on the scene, and at all those years I was meditating and I was doing all my personal development. So by the time my kids, who are just the most beautiful, gorgeous angels, and we've got such a beautiful, tight family unit and family connection. But when we hit the teenage years, things got a little bit difficult, particularly for my daughter. And that was around the age of 13. And, we had this gorgeous, very confident, very vivacious and gregarious young girl who was the school captain and dux of the school and Little Miss Popularity. And then when we hit teenage years, around 13, things went quite a little bit, off the rails a bit, and her emotional state and mental state was quite unstable. And I was blessed at that point of having done many years of my spiritual practice and my personal sustainability practice. And you touched on something really valid and poignant at the start of this call, that you've been saying for many years of your podcast to your audience that we must look after ourselves first. And it's like when the airplane, they're giving instructions, if we're going to go down, everyone, make sure that you put your mask on first. And for me, having a physical, mental, and spiritual and emotional approach to well-being is something that I've maintained for quite some time. Since that time, it was a big wake-up call for me saying, hey, you're not looking after yourself, and you can look after yourself. And if you do look after yourself, you're going to be very stable during other people's unstable times. And that really enabled me to find a deep grounding and stability during our difficult times for our teenage children. And it didn't mean that it wasn't hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for anyone who's going through this. I know how hard it is. It's one of the most challenging things I've ever been through in my life, being with a child that you love so dearly that is going through difficult times. But having our own well-being is critical.
Yeah, Tom, I wanna really just ask, is it realistic? You've got a kid who's suicidal, you got a kid who's depression, hasn't been to school in 3 weeks, you got a kid who's using drugs, sneaking out, stole your car, and we're supposed to meditate? Like, is that realistic?
It's absolutely critical. It's critical on so many levels that we as parents, not only for our own well-being, establish stability and as much equanimity through these difficult times as possible, that we have our physical, mental, and emotional state stabilized as much as possible. This is what great leadership is. If you think of a great leader in the world, are they having emotional tantrums and flipping the finger and curling up in a ball, crying their eyes out? No, a great leader, if you think of a political leader, a business leader, a social leader, there's someone that we can rely on for their stability. And your children need you to be stable. Your children need you to be unconditionally loving. And that was the great foundation for my children, was knowing that they've got a rock solid in their life, because they don't have a lot of rock solids in their life. Their friends aren't rock solid. Their school's not rock solid. There's a lot of uncertainty in their life. But if they know that there's a consistent, unconditionally loving, supporting parent, and my wife and I were both very blessed that we've had our spiritual practices and we've both been working on ourselves for a long time, and we both have a stable relationship. I think that's really important. It's not perfect, and no relationship ever is, but we've got a beautiful, stable connection. We've been together for 35 years. So I can imagine a single parent, it would be very, very difficult. There's no question about it. But what's critical is that your child knows that they've got a rock solid in their life and that you are unconditionally loving and supporting. Doesn't mean you agree with everything that they're doing and you're going to condone everything that you're doing. And there's ways to discipline a child. My son definitely tested the boundaries in his teenage years. And there was one thing that was really, really important, particularly for my son, was that he knew that there was a strong figure in his life that knew where the boundaries were. And when that boundary was crossed, he knew that there were ramifications, because that's how he's going to learn. If he didn't learn because of ramifications from that crossing of the line, then there's no guidelines in life. And so there would be always ramifications and discipline if he crossed the boundary. But there was always, so I'll give you an example of what this looks like. So if he crossed the boundary, he was a graffiti artist, and we had rules around him doing graffiti, but sometimes he crossed the boundary line, and then we had to instill some discipline. Whenever that discipline was instilled, I would always finish with, do you know why I'm doing this? He'd roll his eyes and he'd say, yes, Dad. And I'd say, tell me why I'm doing this. He says, you're doing it because you love me. I said, I love you so freaking much, son. And that's why I'm creating this boundary, because I want you to grow into a great man. I want you to grow into a great leader. I know you've got these great capabilities inside you. I see you and I love you. And that's why I'm putting this supporting mechanism in here to instill in you a sense of right and wrong. And when they know that it's coming from love, when they know they're unconditionally supported, it completely changes things. And they're not going to turn out perfect, and they're still going to push the boundary line. They're still going to have difficulties in life. But having that rock solid there is a thing that will help them get through it.
So I want to take just a second to talk about the Beyond Risk and Back Parenting Masterclass. Now, before you fast forward through this, I want to let you know it will be short, because I want you to hear this. First of all, the class is $99. Second of all, it's 56 classes. And everything from the green, things are going good and we want to make them go great, to the yellow, my kid's at risk and I am worried and I want them to go green, but they could go red, and how will I know? And then, of course, it is for the parents who are dealing with a kid in red, that crisis, that life and limb section. You get all three of those courses for that $99. You watch it at your own pace, and it comes with a session with me. Go to brabapp.com. That's BRABAPP.com. Brab, for Beyond Risk and Back. Brabapp.com. Let me help you help your kids. Part of the outside noisy, inside empty concept that I always struggled with was that when I am caught up in the noise of the outside, my child struggling, my relationship going through the gauntlet, work isn't what I thought, whatever it was, right? Whatever is that's supposed to be the moment that I'm supposed to chant Om like a Buddhist monk. And that's the part that gets frustrating, is that I think with the idea of meditation and the concept of meditation is that there is an image that once you hit this state, you're always in the state. And if you lose the state, you're somehow a failure. You're somehow, God, I hear people do it all the time. And I often use the story about, Jesus when he goes to the temple and the money changers are there and he's so angry. He's running around with a whip and he's whipping people and he's flipping tables. We are talking about the Prince of Peace flipping tables and whipping people, right? But then it was after that he went to the desert and he hit another stride, and that enlightenment is not some I'm always there or I'm never there. It's I get there when I can, and that's the practice part. Can you talk about this? Because the frustration is you're screaming at your kid, they're screaming at you, and then when it's over, you're like, that would have been a good moment to be enlightened. That was not enlightenment. So then what? What happens when you screw this up? When do you meditate? Like, when does the practice begin and end?
It's always a practice. Every moment is a practice. Every moment is a process of learning and growing and evolving. Every single moment of life is a process of growing, evolving, and learning. Most people don't realize that, and most people are oblivious to that. So there's a couple of things to touch on here. Firstly, our society is so deeply coded that we are in reactive mode, which means that if shit hits the fan, I feel the shit, right? And I turn to shit. And that's in every drama on Netflix. It's in every book that we read. It's in every song that we listen to. Mariah Carey, I Can't Live Without You, all these sorts of things. And we've got to, that's just a code that's in society. And what we want to start to recode society with is, how can I be sovereign regardless of what's going on around me? And here's the interesting thing, it's a two-step process here, which is really important we take this into consideration. We've got to break the code of what we've been conditioned with, is that if bad things happen, then I feel bad. If good things happen, I feel bad. We've got to change that. I feel, regardless of circumstances, a state that I want to maintain sovereignly. And that's something that we're working towards. It's not something that we sustain and get into straight away by having that thought. It's a process that we have to work towards. How can I be more sovereign regardless of world's circumstances? Now, here's the second step in the process. Because the world is, interestingly, a place of magnetism. It's a place of law of attraction. That my state that I'm in will, interestingly, start to determine and dictate the circumstances and situations that I'm experiencing in life. Now, if I'm in a vibration, a low frequency of anger, guilt, shame, fear, frustration, sadness, then I'm emitting a frequency, and this is getting a little bit esoteric, but hopefully your audience will be open to this idea. I'm emitting a vibration like a Wi-Fi modem sending a signal, and that starts to reciprocate based upon magnetism and the laws of attraction, the quantum field, a like experience that will be validating that particular state that I'm in. Now, interestingly, when we raise our frequency and we get into a more calm and gentle and kind and loving state, and we're able to sustain that more consistently. You won't always be able to sustain it all the time. You should see me when I'm running late for a plane. And there's going to be times when you're going to be bumped out of that state. But the more we can work on developing that state and harnessing that state, the more we're going to find that we start attracting into our life more harmonious experiences. It's really interesting. And what we've got to do is flip the particular paradigm that we're in, that when things are difficult in our life, we feel difficult inside of ourselves. But if we flip that and go, if I'm sovereign in my state and I start to maintain a higher vibration and I have a daily practice, for me, it's like all sorts of things. It's gym, it's yoga, it's breath work, it's meditation, it's journaling. I do lots of things to have sovereignty in my state. Then I know that what I'm in as a vibration is going to start to determine a lot of the things and factors that are coming into my life as a result of that state that I'm in.
You're literally talking about trying to find a state of being that's independent of the world around you, that you're not just being like sucked along this current of where the world's going. Everybody's looking here politically, arguing about who's right, who's wrong, what's real, what's not, and you're sucked into it rather that you're able to stand aside. And you're talking about being able to do that with your own kids, that what your kids are going through, you're actually able as a parent to have an independent experience from your children's physical, emotional, mental state.
Absolutely. It's critical that we work on that. And if you think of anyone that's in the world that we look up to with great reverence and respect, let's just say Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, what we'll find is that they all were in very, very difficult, troubling, and challenging circumstances. Yet it was their composure, their compassion, their lovingness that they sustained regardless of the challenges in the outside world. And if we can take that concept and integrate that into being a parent, then what you'll find is that, yes, you will have difficult times, but what you'll find is that your children will come out. And this is one thing that we found with my children. My wife and I talked about this. We knew that within them was this divine being, this beautiful, conscious, pure, divine soul. And that if we supported and gave our attention to that, we knew that they would find that and that they will find that themselves as well. And if we can provide the stability, the unconditional love, and the support around them, as well as the boundaries and the structures, then that will just emerge over time. And, for us, we found that 16, 17, 18, all of the anomalies, the difficulties, the hormonal stuff that they're going through, which is quite standard for kids these days, they just kind of grew out of it. And then they found within themselves, because we were looking at that part of them as well, they naturally started to find that brilliance within inside themselves. We just got to trust that that brilliance will emerge, but also give it the attention that it deserves and give it the attention on ourselves as well that it deserves.
I want to go back to this Vedic meditation process that you talked about, the tone that you can hear in your head. It's not something you sing. Is my first question. Is it something you chant out loud? Is it an audible verbal thing? And the second is, can we find our own, or do we need a teacher guru to teach us, show us, or tell us what it is? Can we hear it if we just listen?
Ideally, it's a sound that you repeat inside your head, and you repeat that over and over again. And think of the analogy I like is if you've got a disturbed baby in a cot, and we gently caress its back, very softly, very, very. Now, if you did it really hard, the baby couldn't sleep because it would be too abrupt. But if we did it very, very gently, it will soothe and lull the baby into quietness, into sleep. And that's what the mantra is like. We're repeating that gently inside our head. Now, ideally, what we recommend in these situations is that we learn from a qualified teacher in a particular process, which is 4 1.5-hour sessions where you get a lot of knowledge supporting the practice. It's not a matter of just, hey, I'm going to say this sound, and all of a sudden my life's going to be better. We offer not just a course where people learn how to meditate, but also learn all the mechanics about the meditation, why they're going to get thoughts, why they're going to get sensations, why they're going to get potentially some uncomfortable experiences during the meditation, as we're clearing a lot of stresses out of the body. Stillness and calmness is the innate state. But what we do need to do is clear a lot of the physical and emotional and mental stresses that are in the body. And that's a process that can take time. And it needs a lot of support from your teacher to support you along the way. It's not something to be treated lightly. This is a process that takes time, and having some good guidance around you will go a long way.
Let's talk about other resources, because we're going to make sure everybody has your resource and contact information at the end. But let's say we're in a situation where we got to get peaceful right now, and we don't have the time or maybe even the money to to do something like that, where would you tell me to go? If I said, this is great, I'll do that when I can, but what do I do now? Like right now on this call, right now after this call, what do I do?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everyone through a 2-minute meditation. And what they can do is they can extend this into what I would suggest a 10-minute meditation. I'm going to give it to you for 2 minutes so we don't take up the whole podcast, but you can ideally do this for 10 to 20 minutes. And you'll find that it's quite a game changer if you just want to start with this one alone. And I'll give you another simple one after this as well. So everyone just close your eyes. Now I want you to notice as you're sitting there, as long as you're not driving a car, I want you to notice that there's a breath that's moving in and out of your body, and that breath has been ebbing and flowing in and out of your body since the day you were born and came out of the womb. Now I want you to notice as that breath moves in and out of the body that it's moving through your nostrils. And we're very ignorant of this fact that the air moves in and out through those nostrils 24/7, night and day. I want you to bring more awareness into the movement of that air through the nostrils. I want you to notice as it passes through the rim of your nostril, there's a very slight cooling effect around the rim of the nostril. And this is where the air brushes the moisture on the skin, slightly cooling the skin as the air hits the moisture. Little bubbles of sweat inside the nostril, and the air brushes that moisture on the skin, slightly cooling the skin. It does it on the in-breath, and it does it on the out-breath. I want you to keep your attention on that cool skin around the rim of the nostril. Now the mind will get a little bit bored of this, and it will start looking for things a little bit more enticing, a little bit more exciting. But your job is to keep bringing the mind back, going, no, you're staying here with me. Cool skin around the rim of the nostril. Your meditation isn't just focusing on the cool skin. Your meditation is bringing the mind back when it drifts away, like a muscle that lifts a dumbbell, developing that skill. Let go of everything else in your life, letting go of the future and the past, just being the cool skin around the rim of the nostril. Keep the mind there just a little bit longer. And then slowly letting go of the meditation and opening the eyes. And so this is a very simple process. Just the cool skin around the rim of the nostril. And what we're doing is we're bringing the mind to the center and to the moment. And in the moment, there's actually no stress.
What my takeaway from this exercise is that it suddenly dawns on me that the only other time in my life that I've given that much attention to breathing through my nose and the sensation of my nostrils is when I have a cold. And the experience of realizing that the only time that I pay that much attention to breathing and my nostrils is when I'm uncomfortable and I'm discontent and I'm sick. That I found it very freeing that all of a sudden there was another reason to pay attention. It doesn't just have to be, this is what you were talking about with the how we get pulled along with the energy of our environment. We don't just have to pay attention when it's going bad. We can just pay attention at any time.
And when we're calm, there's a beautiful concept, which is one of the third, I think it's the third law of thermodynamics, that states that as de-excitation occurs, order increases. And as excitation occurs, disorder increases. So take example, a football stadium, you can have very calmly 100,000 people walk out of that football stadium in 10 minutes. But if there's a gunshot or a fire or a bomb, there's pandemonium and it turns into chaos. And same with boiling water. That's where it comes from. Boiling water, more excitation, more disorder. And our mind and body, the calmer it is, the more orderly it becomes. And so it's really important that we work on having calmness in our mind, our nervous system, and our body that enables us to have greater coherence, cohesiveness, brain functionality, biochemistry. Everything works better when we're calmer. So it's critical that we spend moments each day finding ways to calm down our mind and nervous system. Being in a hyperstimulated, angry, frustrated, depressed, sad, anxious state is not going to work well for anyone, and it's certainly not going to work well for people around you.
Tom, how are people going to find you, follow up with you, sign up for your programs, things like that? Where do we find you?
Look, I love to be in touch with my community and people that want to reach out. So Instagram is the great place to find me. You can send me a direct message. I will respond to all my messages. It's my Instagram account, and I don't have any bots or AIs in there that will respond. It will be me. So I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any challenges, let's talk, and I'll see if there's something I can do to support you getting through these difficult times. You can go to my website. So my Instagram is Tom Cronin, just one word, TomCronin. And my website is tomcronin.com. So very simple, Tom Cronin for Instagram, tomcronin.com for my website. And from there, we can explore how I can support you. And that could be through meditation programs, mentoring, or through retreats. There's lots of ways that we can work together. And I've got books and other things out that can help you as well.
Tom, you said you'd give us a second one just as we got into the nostrils meditation. What was the second really short one you were going to?
This one's really simple. It's very basic. Now, what's happened in our society is that we've really promoted the cerebral nature of life. So that is that we promote everything that's in the head. That's thinking, talking, and listening. Okay, thinking, talking, and listening are the three big things that we really emphasize more than anything. So podcasts, emails, Instagram, all of that's up here, very top heavy in the head. And as a species, we're very proud of the fact that we can think a lot, and we think a lot. And that's what's causing most of our problems. So with this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to shift all of the energy and all of the attention down, 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 down into what we call the root chakra, or the base of the spine. So it's a very simple process. All you will do is ideally sit on the floor, leaning up against a wall or your bed or the sofa, and you'll have your legs out in front of you. So your back will be supported against a wall and your legs will be out in front of you like this. So you'll be in an L shape. And then your arms from your shoulders will be on your knees. So now your hands go onto your knees, and you have like an A frame with your hands going from your shoulders down onto your knees and your legs out in front of you. And it's a really simple, supportive posture sitting upright. Now, the key to this is you put your timer on your phone for 10 minutes. And this is going to be a bit of a difficult exercise, but it's very powerful if you do this on a daily basis. What we're doing here is we're going to shift all of our attention down with your eyes closed, out of your head, down into the pressure of your buttocks pressing into the ground. That's all. You can be aware of the pressure of your buttocks pressing into the ground. And if you want to give it a little bit more emphasis as to where your attention's going down there, you can flex what we call the mula bandha, which is your pelvic floor. So it's almost like trying to stop yourself weeing in the toilet. So you pull that muscle in, and then you go, okay, there's my attention. My attention's going to the buttocks pressing into the floor or the pelvic floor clenching. Either or, doesn't matter. All you're doing is moving your attention to that area in the body. Now, what it's like getting a toothpaste tube and squeezing it, turning it upside down and squeezing it down. And you'll find that all of the energy comes out of your head and it just goes down into this base area. Now, this root chakra, this base area, is actually foundational for all your energy points in your body. And what it does is that we don't give our root chakra our base, which is the area for security and stability. Okay, it's the area that is recognized energetically for stability and security. And when we're very top heavy, it makes us very unstable because we don't have a foundation. Imagine a house without a foundation. It's very unstable. And very few of us give our root chakra much attention. And that means we don't have a very strong stability in our security and our safety. So just by putting for 10 minutes attention on that area, and then after your 10 minutes is up, just lie down horizontally. Lie down on the floor for another 10 minutes to integrate that. So that would be a 20-minute meditation. And that alone is quite a powerful technique.
When I was talking to Tom off the air, the main thing that I asked him is that I wanted the practical. I wanted him to be able to help the listeners of this show to move from that outside noisy chaos to the inside empty. The one realization and why I wanted Tom Cronin on this show was we cannot be good parents accidentally. And there's a lot of ways to wake up. What Tom has shown us in just the two ways is a soft way. It's such a loving way. It's so gentle. I found myself having trouble forming the questions after that first meditation with the nostrils that he put us through. And that's the quietude that I have not enjoyed in my life because I'm ADHD, because I love heavy metal, flamenco dancing, screen therapy, whatever reason that I am the way I am. However you get back to on purpose, whether it's from jogging or going to the gym or sitting in an L-shaped position against a wall with your legs 90 degrees out from your upper torso and your arms stretched so that your fingers are touching your knees, and you're lifting your pelvic floor, or what my martial arts instructor would say, squeeze your gooch. that process brings you home. Because parents at home, when you're taking care of yourself first, that's when you're going to do your best work with your adult relationships. And when those adult relationships heal, then you can do your best work with your children. So remember to do that. Take care of yourself first, your adult relationship second, and your children third, so that you can do your best with your children. Huge thanks to Tom Cronin. Please make sure that you go to his website, tomcronin.com. I am there right now. It's a beautiful webpage. He's got lots of events coming up. He's got retreats. This guy does good work. And I'm very grateful for him coming on and sharing his practices and his resources with us. And always big shout out to Deepen Productions that always makes this show sound so good and gets the social media stuff out there. Look for us on TikTok at brabpod.com. Look for us on YouTube with the same name. And look for us each week on Beyond Risk and Back. I'll see you next time, parents.